by sharing the real-life stories of those who've experienced it firsthand.
Marcel West is here.
Hey man, how's it going?
Good, buddy. How you doing?
Good. Happy to be here.
Happy for you to be here, man. This is great. It's great. We can do this over Zoom, and I just want to say, I don't know, I just said it before we started, but I just want to say thanks for coming on and doing this.
Yeah, definitely. No, thanks for having me. This is a great thing you do here, so I'm glad to be part of it.
Thanks, man. I guess how you been doing? How you been doing since the quarantine? I know we've been in talks a little bit, but how have things been going?
Not too bad. It's definitely challenging at times. Home. One great thing, get to spend more time with the family, so definitely happy about that. I don't normally get that in my usual day to day, just with work and stuff. It does. I don't have as much time through the week, so it's kind of nice that way. At the same time, love my kids, but they drive me insane sometimes. So,
Right.
But overall, it's been pretty good. It's obviously there's some definitely uncertainty there for a lot of people, not knowing when we're going to go back to the way things were, or if at all, and how that's going to look. But not too bad. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Yeah, just been trying to stay busy. I know we've talked a little bit, but yeah, for me, it's just been trying to stay busy and stay connected, stay social, because I think isolation is not good at all for the mental state. But
Definitely.
Yeah, I guess I should say before we get into it, for anyone who's been kind of following along, I just want to say thanks to everyone who's been reaching out. I've had a lot of people reach out and just say like they've been watching the podcast and stuff and they enjoy them. And I haven't done one in a little while, and I've just been kind of processing what's been going on, and also before this even happened, just the kind of direction of where the podcast is going. So I just want to say that. But I'm glad you're here today, Marcel. And yeah, man, we talked a little bit before. We had some good conversations about kind of your story and stuff like that. But if you want to go ahead and dive into it.
Yeah, sure. Definitely. Yeah, we've definitely had some good conversations, and going back a few months now, I guess, really kind of the first of them. And I was trying to think when you asked me to come on, where would I kind of start with my story? And I, like any of us, we could always probably go back to our childhood and, find things that may have led us to where we are today and stuff like that. But I guess the biggest thing for me, like I shared to you, probably couple years ago, I guess kind of, I don't know if you want to call hitting that bottom or whatever, or kind of had a bit of some panic attacks, I guess, is when it really kind of hit for me. And I realized that, I wasn't managing a lot of things very well, my day-to-day stress, that balance between my work and my home life and things like that. And, I was starting to drink more than I cared to. And I was, probably telling myself that it was a habit. And it was becoming more of a habit than I wanted to let on. And I was trying to, blaming the job why I was stressed out and maybe having anxiety, or starting to have a lot more anxiety and panic attacks. Not realizing how much the alcohol was actually playing into that. You finish a work week on a Friday, you grab a case of beer or a bottle of rum or whatever, and start having a few drinks on a Friday night, and then they taste good, so you had a few more on Saturday, and then you're not feeling 100% going back to work on Monday morning. Not necessarily hungover, but I guess kind of hungover, and that's adding to the stress and anxiety and compounding on top of that. And then by Thursday, Friday, you're feeling good again. So then you had a rough work week, so you'd go get another bottle of rum. And then it was just a cycle that kept kind of building upon itself. And then it just kind of broke for me. There was just a couple things that happened that I didn't know how to deal with anymore. And I almost went off work on leave, kind of talked to my boss at the time, just scaled back my duties. And at the same time, fortunately, I was lucky enough to have an employee assistance program at work, and I reached out to them, and they were able to set me up with a counselor here locally that I was able to get into very quickly. So that was great. And that was kind of where the process started for me. And they helped me kind of put some strategies in place and really figure out, what was the cause of my stress and my anxiety and those panic attacks that I was starting to have. Was it the job, or was it because I wasn't managing a lot of things that happened to myself over that time frame? And I thankful for her, some of those strategies that she helped me with, the stuff that I still use today before coronavirus and now especially during coronavirus, that to help me kind of get through some of those mentally tough days and weeks. So
Right.
it's kind of the high level, I guess, story.
Yeah. No, that's awesome that you found her. So was she over the phone, or was that in person?
So the first one was over the phone. It was just kind of a quick consult just to really see like where they needed to go with that. Obviously they always want to make sure, you're not harm to yourself or harm to others and things like that. Because, I guess would have to take a different course of action. But then within a week of that first phone call, I met with her in person, and then we were meeting, I think it was weekly for a few weeks, just to kind of get things started off and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's good, man. So what kind of strategies really helped you, I guess?
Well, one of the ones that I really like for her, that I never thought of before, because again, I was when I went to see her, I was putting a lot of blame of my stress and anxiety from the job, what was kind of the primary factor behind it. So one of the things she recommended me to do was to do a timeline. Just take a big sheet of paper, draw a line down the middle of it, and then just start, going back, 6 months or a year. Like, you didn't have to go too far back, but just anything that positive that I felt was a positive that happened to me in my life that was kind of a memorable event, just put above the line and just kind of put a little date of when it happened. And then anything that I felt was a negative or a stressful event, just put it below the line. And very quickly, I was like, even though there was a lot of great positive things that happened in my life, there's a lot more stressful things going on than I wanted to kind of admit to, I guess, or thought of. Because they're sometimes just little things, and they compound on top of each other. But I realized that the job was only a very small piece of that, and I was putting a lot of blame there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Had you ever been to therapy before?
No, that was the first time that I really, in that kind of setting, I guess, for sure. Yeah.
Did you find a relief right away? Like, what was your first impressions of it?
I don't know if I felt the relief right away or not, but it definitely felt good to be able to open up to somebody who I didn't know and they didn't know me and didn't know anything about, what was going on in my life.
Right.
So I guess, it's sometimes when we talk to friends or family or whatever, they can maybe judge us without meaning to judge us,
mm-hmm.
or already have opinions made up about us before we even start the conversation sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I know I can be guilty of that. So something I want to try to be careful of, but with her, I just felt like I could open up and talk and be comfortable, and, knowing that it was kind of kept private as well too. Right. So there was that trust there.
Right. It's like you have no emotional connection or tied to them. It's like their only objective is to help you with what you're going on, and that's what their profession is. So
yeah, they're not in it for anything else, right? Like, there's no other reason why they're there talking to you other than just to help you get better, right? So
right. Yeah, it's great, man. It's did you, before you got to this point, do you think, like, because I think it's so common in today's world, especially for men, like, would you, like, think of therapy as, like, something you would not want to do?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Like, going back to, again, like my childhood, even like high school and stuff like that, I was never like an overly like very confident person. Definitely, like most people probably had a lot of self-esteem problems then, and, a lot of friends and stuff like that, but still struggled. But then as I got into my working career, in my mid 20s, I started to become kind of a different person, more confident and just kind of opened up and very much a extrovert, I guess, if you will, and started talking, just more comfortable talking in front of people and things like that. And I never ever thought, there was anything wrong, right? And to admit that I had I guess, a problem, or I needed help, or, I guess especially men can always think like, oh, I can handle this myself. I'll figure it out. It's just, this is a bump in the road or whatever, but there's always definitely more there than we want to admit.
100%. Yeah. So so this start like around the time that you got this job in particular?
No, I mean, again, I could probably go back to, maybe a few different instances where I kind of felt the same way in previous careers as well too, with previous jobs. Not to the same level for sure. I was able, I guess, maybe to manage it a little bit more, maybe less stuff in my personal life going on that I didn't have to deal with at that time. But I think it just kind of snowballed right around this particular time. Probably really started to kind of get back maybe about 6 months in, when I had started that position specifically. And again, there's a lot of stuff going on in my personal life. I was traveling back and forth from here to Nova Scotia every weekend. My family was still there. I was still here. My son, he's 6 now and doing great, but there was something going on with him, but we weren't sure what it was. We didn't know if it was, somewhere's on the autism spectrum. He was delayed in a lot of stuff, just like speech and walking and gross motor skills and fine motor skills and stuff like that. So we were working with, or my wife was working with, like early intervention with him back home in Nova Scotia, and I wasn't there. So there's a lot of those factors going on, and then we finally eventually found out that he has a genetic condition, deletion 22q, which basically means he's missing part of his 22nd chromosome. But that just added a whole other level of stress of not knowing, like there's so much, there's like 200 different possible things that could be wrong. So then you start going through trying to check off all those boxes. So just, there was a lot more that kind of compounded on top of it. And because I didn't start managing how to handle some of those stresses earlier on in earlier careers, I didn't know how to deal with all that now. And it just, so much had built up that I just kind of cracked, and I didn't know how to manage anything anymore.
Right. So just
If that makes sense.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
So just completely overwhelmed in your personal and professional life all the time.
Pretty much, yeah. Just kind of stuck and not know where to go, and just everything kind of coming at you, right? And how to make sense of it all, and just kind of jumping from one thing to the next, trying to solve it all, but not really knowing, not really getting anywhere. So
running in circles.
Yeah, basically, big time. Yeah, big time.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then that's kind of when the drinking started to come in for you.
I think it started becoming more of a crutch than a social thing or a habit, if you will, right? Like it was probably all like, oh, weekend was here. It was always nice to enjoy a couple of drinks, just relaxing or whatever. But then those couple of drinks probably became more and more, and then started affecting how I felt going back to work. Just again blaming the alcohol for my stress and anxiety at work, when it was really, it wasn't the work that was causing me to feel that way. It was the effects of the alcohol that were causing me to feel that way.
Right.
Right.
And then that's another circle, right? So
and that, yeah, right. And that's just a vicious circle that just keeps going and going. Because then again, you say to yourself, or I'd say to myself, all right, that's it. I'm not gonna have a drink this weekend. Like, oh, I just feel like shit. Like I don't want to do this anymore. And then like I say, by Thursday, Friday, you kind of feel better, and you're like, well, whatever. I'll just have a couple, right? It's the weekend. I deserve it.
It's not hard to convince
and then
yourself.
you go back to feeling kind of like crap again on Monday, right? And it just perpetual, just goes on and on, right?
Right. What was like the breaking point for you where you just said like, I can't do this anymore?
It was I was at work actually, and something had happened, not something I did, something a fellow employee had done, associate that I was responsible for, and so file a complaint about this person, and it was something pretty serious, and I just didn't know how to manage it anymore, and I just kind of cracked, and I grabbed my phone and went out to my truck and sat there and pretty much broke down in tears and called my boss. And fortunately, he was a very understanding person, and helped me a lot through that process as well too. So I was very fortunate for that. So, and that's pretty much that day is when I called our employee assistant program and started the process of seeing somebody.
And what was the process like from there? Like that's kind of when you initiated it, but I'm sure it took like a lot of work to kind of get to where you're at now.
Yeah. So yeah, the first thing, I guess, right at that point, I made the decision to quit drinking, which it wasn't really that tough. Again, it was more of just finding something to replace that with on the weekend, just to keep myself busy, I guess, more than anything, or distracted from wanting to have that drink or whatever. So that was step number one. And then starting to talk to her and with the therapist, really setting a plan of, I guess, kind of focusing on, again, at that point, I was still, when I first met with her, it was a lot of blaming, is it the job? So it was like, do I stay in that particular position, or do I look at transitioning into another role within the same company? That was really kind of the focus of our sessions to start off with. And then through those sessions, again, one of the big things she got me to do was that timeline to start. And that really helped me realize that, okay, it's not actually so much about the job that's causing a lot of the stress and anxiety for me. It's a lot of these other things that's going on in my personal life as well too. And I'm just not managing these in a healthy way at all. And then she made the recommendation for, to talk to my doctor about medication as well too. So anxiety medication, which I was very nervous and hesitant about at first, just because, it was kind of like, okay, like, alcohol is kind of one form of a drug that people use to manage that stuff. Am I really just replacing that with this anxiety medication? I don't want to be on this my whole life. So I had a little bit of, hesitation there to start taking that, but I did start taking it. I actually am still on it today. Partly because I'm scared to come off it now because I don't know how I'm going to feel. Right.
Right.
And then some of the other stuff started doing, obviously I was always working out. So that was a big part of my life. So making sure that was still in there. But I started meditating and I started journaling on the daily basis. So I kind of go through waves with that a little bit, periods of time where I'm really good with the meditation and the journaling. Then I might fall off for a little bit and then I pick it back up. But since COVID-19 happened, I've been very dedicated with it and doing it daily, and it's definitely helped me stay focused throughout that process. So
that's awesome. I guess first, like with the medication, and I mean, I'm sure there's probably a lot of people that are in that boat too, where they have those similar thoughts about it, where they're like unsure whether to go on it, they don't want to be in it forever, or they don't know what it'll be like, or whatever the case may be. What was it like when you first started taking it? And yeah, what was it like?
Yeah, it's a pretty mild dose. Like it's the smallest dose you can get. It's and again, like I went, I seen my doctor, and he said, look, let's try this, for 30 days or whatever, or it might have been 3 months. He gave me a prescription for. I can't remember now. and I took it home, I got it filled, and I talked to my wife about it and stuff. And you know, she was encouraging whatever way I felt, what I should do with that. I kind of slept on it that night, and then the next day I decided, well, you know, I got to do something. Like, I have my family to worry about here, right? Like, I can't be feeling this way. I can't be, you know, reacting this way at work and stuff like that. Like, I need to be able to kind of go forward. So I was like, well, if it helps, you know, let's see. So I started taking it. I don't want to say that I noticed any big change. It's not like any magic button overnight or anything like that. And I just, all of a sudden, everything was better. But it was doing everything in kind of a combination, right? So I quit drinking. I was probably exercising even a little bit more than I normally would have. I started taking the medication. I was meditating. I was journaling. So it was really hard to pinpoint, like, was it any one thing that kind of helped me through that? But gradually over time, it just kind of, all of a sudden, things started settling down, and maybe what would get me kind of worked up and feeling anxious before, it was just kind of like, oh, okay, that's no big deal. Like, let's just put that aside. I'll deal with that later. I'm in the middle of something else right now. Whereas before, it was like any little thing that threw off what I had planned for that day, it was like this huge deal. It didn't matter what it was, right? It could be the smallest thing. It just kind of messed up my whole day, and I just almost be like in panic mode.
Right.
It just kind of helped me level out, I guess, right? And again, don't know if that's the medication or the other stuff that I started doing, but it's probably a combination.
Yeah, I imagine it's a combination of all of them, right?
Yeah.
A combination of all of them to calm yourself and kind of move in a healthy direction, I guess.
Yeah, and I find now, even, like, I am still taking the medication, but I still find that without the meditation side of it as well too, that sometimes I can still get a little overwhelmed. You know, I do have a lot going on in my life, couple careers going on right now, and you know, kids and family and stuff like that. And if I don't use that meditation, you kind of start worrying about, like, what happened yesterday, or you know, what's going to happen tomorrow or next month or next year. But when I'm meditating, I find it does help me anyways, kind of really focusing on the present. Say, okay, just, you can only worry about what's in front of you right now, and not what's going on. You got a plan for the future, but you know, you can't change it.
What type of meditation do you do?
Well, when I first started trying to do meditation, I didn't understand what the hell I was doing or trying to do, to be honest. Yeah. You know, you start sitting there, you breathe, you always hear people say, like, oh, you're supposed to clear your mind, you're supposed to kind of zen out and not think of anything. Well, I couldn't do that. Like, it was like, you know, just thoughts coming in like crazy, and you know, trying to focus on my breathing. And I tried some of the meditation apps, and just, I don't know, like, they just didn't seem to work for me. And then I bought a book, because I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make this work. So I bought a book. It was called Unplugged, and it was a book on meditation that was it was almost like she written it specifically for me. I was just going through, and I was like, oh my God, like, that's exactly how I feel, and yeah, that happened to me. And it just really helps simplify what you're trying to do. You're not trying to make your mind go completely blank. It's just like, it's allowing you to, the more you practice it, so you start off with 5 minutes, just really focusing on your breath. And then a thought comes in. Well, you acknowledge the thought that it was there, and then you just realize that you've lost focus on your breath, and you go back to it. And the more you do that, the more there's gaps in between those thoughts. Almost like gaps of like nothingness. There's always going to be the thoughts there, but eventually those gaps get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then that relates into how you can stay present in your day. Because what is it? Something like between 60 and 80,000 thoughts go through our mind in the run of a day. And
Wow.
Overwhelming. I think it's something like 60 or 70% of those can be negative thoughts. So it allows you to figure out how to manage those thoughts throughout the day. So when a thought comes into your mind, you can acknowledge it, you file it for what it is, and let it go and not dwell on it. Right.
That's very useful.
Yeah. So I've now gone back to a meditation app. I think it's called Peace is the one that I'm using currently right now. And from reading that book and practicing what I was taught in that book, I'm finding the guided meditation now through this app much more useful for me at this time.
So it's a lot of guided breathing.
A lot of guided breathing, a lot of different talks. So there's foundational ones, and then there's one specific on like anxiety and work, relationships and different things like that. So depending on what's going on, what's important to you, I guess at the time, one of the ones I'm focused on right now is the work anxiety one. And it does talk about a lot of those, again, going back to, how to deal with a lot of those thoughts that you have throughout the day. You don't want to not think about them, but you don't want to dwell on them. It's just acknowledge it for what it is and let go of it. If it's something that you need to think about later, write it down somewhere so you don't have to keep thinking about it. And that was one thing I learned from it as well too, is, have a journal or a piece of paper beside your bed. So a lot of people wake up in the middle of the night because they're stressed and they're thinking about stuff. But if you have something there that you can write those thoughts down on quickly, then it's kind of like it's out of your head and you can go back to sleep and get a better sleep.
Something about writing it down, like getting it out.
Yeah.
It's very relieving, and you almost wouldn't think it would be if you never done it, but it really is.
It can feel weird when you start the journal or write that stuff out, right? Like it's, people always make fun of like, oh, you're a teenage girl, writing down your crush in your journal or your diary.
Yeah, what are you gonna write in your journal?
Like, yeah, right. Like somebody's gonna find this big secret or whatever. But yeah, no, it's good, right? Like I the more I do it, the more comfortable I'm with it, and sometimes it's just, like I always have my journal with me, like it's right here right now, like it's, I'm never too far from that. So sometimes it's just a bullet point that I've got to write down. Sometimes it's just looking at my journal after I meditate and just going back through my last 2 or 3 days and look and say, what are those tasks that I need to take care of to get out of my head? Or sometimes I sit there and I'll write a page or two of something great that happened or something bad that happened that I just need to feel like I need to get out, right? So it can be whatever you need it to be or want it to be, right?
Do you find sometimes that, like, this is what I've found, whenever you have negative or maybe irrational thoughts or whatever thoughts they may be, when you write them down and you can look at them outside of your mind, you can kind of see with more clarity.
Yeah, definitely. Big time. Right.
That's what I found for sure. It's like, you can see it and you're like, I don't think I actually feel that way, or I can kind of see like what's going on. Like when it's in your head, and I think that goes back to like therapy and talking it out, whether it's talking or writing it down. It's like when you actually say it, you realize, the weight's lifted off your chest.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, big time, right? Like it's like, we all have those negative thoughts, like, oh, I'm not good enough, or, why am I trying this? Like, I can't be successful at this, or I'm such a failure or whatever. But in reality, it's, you put it on paper, like you say, you write it out, and then you look at it and say, well, no, like, I actually have a lot of good qualities about me to make me successful in this, or whatever it is you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like what you said earlier about just kind of that turning point where you were thinking about going on medication and stuff, and this was when it was the turning point of you getting help, and you said to yourself, like, I have a family, I have kids, I have a job, like I need to do this.
Yeah.
Like I can't keep going this way. And I think that's interesting, and it's kind of been something I've been thinking about. And I don't mean to pick on men, but I just think it's important that, like, we take on that burden where it's like we have to be like strong and just do it. And sometimes you're not going to do it to your full capacity, whether it's your family or your job or whatever it is. Because usually men take great pride in that, and that's in those stuff. So like you can't do that to your full capacity if you're struggling. So you kind of have to open up and
Yeah, no,
Um,
big time for sure. I know what you're saying, but I think a lot of that is it goes back to society of portraying men are this big strong person that's not allowed to have feelings or cry or open up, right? They're supposed to keep everything bottled in and kind of shove it down, right? So
mhm.
it's we've never, I guess in the past, people have never been allowed to be able, or men haven't been able to allowed to express themselves in that way, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's okay to we kind of like we gravitate towards that. Like we gravitate towards having a mission, having a responsibility, family, like whatever it is, and like working hard and stuff. But um, it's like you got to work on yourself too, I guess. Or yeah, like when it
Yeah.
comes out in drinking, and I know that's very common.
Oh, for sure. More common than I think a lot of people realize. Even with COVID-19, when everything first went into quarantine and they shut everything down, like all the liquor stores here were closed, and then
Mhm.
very quickly they realized that there's people out there, right or wrong or good or bad, that do struggle with that and are dependent on it. So they had to open up some of the liquor stores back up, to
Mhm.
to kind of allow for that, right? So it's so easy that can kind of become an addiction, and I never understood it before, and till I was in that situation where, again, I don't know that I was necessarily addicted to it. More so, it was maybe in a little bit way, or was starting to become addicted to it in a sense of how it made me feel and kind of forget some of the stresses that I was going through. It was kind of a bit of a relief for me, even temporary. But I
Right.
can see how it can become an addiction very easily.
It's probably the beginning stages, right, where you're starting to like depend on it for some relief.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and there is some alcoholism in my family, and I'm sure maybe that is in genetics a little bit. I don't know. So that thought was always in my mind, and kind of worried about that a little bit as well too, right? So
Of course. Yeah, I feel like that's in everyone's family.
yeah,
You know,
I'm sure if you look hard enough, everybody can find someone, right? So
we're all a bunch of Irish descendants
right.
and everything. But
Yeah.
what was I going to say? Yeah, I just wanted to. First of all, I mean, we work together. We're both personal trainers. That's how we met.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say like something I noticed early on, just from working with you and stuff, and everything that we've done together. Is like you're a very hard worker,
Thank you.
and very committed, and like determined and stuff. And I just I was wondering like is this something that kind of have you always been in that lane?
Um, yes and no. I think I definitely I struggled early on. So I mean, I never graduated high school. I did eventually end up going back and getting my GEDs after my oldest daughter was born when I was 19. So I ended up going back when I was 20 or something like that to get my GED, or 21. But so early on, things didn't come very easy for me. So I don't know if it was just because of, again, maybe my genetics or whatever. I always knew that I wanted more, and I struggled financially big time when I was young. Um, so I was probably about 25, 26, when I was given an opportunity to start in a sales position with a company, and then moved up through the ranks, convinced them to pay for me to go back to university, ended up getting my accounting degree, ended up taking over as controller and CFO for the company 8 years after that. I think that's one of my, probably like in through that process, had a couple good mentors. One of the CEOs of the company was a great mentor. Is actually somebody that I still work with today. He introduced me to Anthony Robbins back in probably would have been like 2007, 2008, somewhere around that time frame. Got to go see him live in Halifax, Anthony Robbins. And I think from that point, it really started to change my perspective on things. And then probably ever since then, I've you know, my work ethic definitely changed a lot, I would say.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you feel when you went through everything you went through, and it all kind of came to a head, did you feel like that was kind of taken back for a step? I guess you would. I mean, you had to kind of slow down for a minute, but I'm just trying to think of like, you know, when these things kind of happen and it all comes to a head, you kind of have to press the reset button and your personality gets shortened for a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, it was, I think it was a good thing, actually, you know, as stressful as the situation was to go through and have to deal with. I think for me, it was a positive thing, because it has allowed me to really refocus my energy and my work ethic in a more healthy way. Whereas before,
Right.
it was always just go, go, go. Like the harder I work, the more hours I work, the more successful I'll be, the better I'll be, and stuff like that. Whereas now I realize more that I still have good work ethic, and I don't mind working hard and long hours, but I'm more efficient with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am able to manage those stresses on a daily basis. I'm more organized. I can plan things out. I can stay focused better because I do meditation, because I look after myself in a healthier way. I'm able to actually, I feel, accomplish more than I was, you know, even 3 years ago, 2 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Work smarter.
Yeah, basically, and I kind of started listening to impact theory a little bit recently too. I don't know if you're familiar with them. It's
No.
Tom Bilio or something like that. I can't remember his last name. It's a great podcast, but he talks a lot on there, and they've been talking a lot about self help and bettering yourself. And he was talking a lot about that as well too. How you don't have to work, you know, 80-hour weeks or whatever, 60-hour weeks to get ahead. You just have to be more efficient and better with your time. So looking after yourself is going to allow you to be able to do more in a shorter period of time.
100%. Yeah. It's very wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to like you can work 80 hours at the wrong thing, or you know what I mean? I guess it's kind of like you have to kind of look at it from an outside perspective, like what's the best use of my time here?
Yeah, if you're focused, you know, for 10 hours, way better than if you're running in circles for 40, right? So
right.
That's what I try to do now, right? It's not necessarily how much time I put into it. It's just, you know, what's the quality of the time that I'm doing that, right? Just kind of it's almost like scheduling out your day so that you have like zero white space in your schedule, but it doesn't mean you don't take any breaks. It's just that you have those times scheduled out, right? So if it's family time, well, you know, for the next 3 hours, I'm with my family. I'm not doing anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. And then and that's part of it too, right? You want quality family time as well. And that's part of taking care of yourself and taking care of your family, which. Yeah.
And this, again, I mean, you know, one of the fortunate things about COVID-19, it's definitely given me more opportunity to be able to have some of that quality time that I don't always allow myself to sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. You're full of wisdom. What?
I don't know about that, but full of something anyway. So.
Yeah. What kind of advice would you give to someone in a similar situation where they're stressed out at work, stressed out at home, and they're just kind of plowing through?
It's a tough one because I don't know, like everybody I think is kind of needs to find their own strength. They work really well for them. What worked for me may not work for somebody else. All I can, I can definitely share, what's worked for me and hope that, it's going to work for them. But don't be scared to reach out and ask for help. I guess the biggest thing, they may be surprised who's willing to help them. I think that was a big thing for me, that I had to realize that I didn't have to do it all on my own. That,
Right.
Even reaching out to my boss, that fear of like, man, like I can't manage this stuff at work. Like he's going to think I'm a failure. I can't handle this job. Like I'm going to get fired or whatever. Come to realize that no, actually, he's just a person like me and actually has gone through some stressful stuff himself, and had found some ways to manage that stress. So kind of had a bit of a, understanding of what I was going through. Right.
Right.
So don't be scared to just reach out and ask for help.
Yeah. And that's kind of funny that it's the way it is. Sometimes we think like you have to be invincible, or like everybody, I'm the only one it's a common thing that I think, I've heard many times. It's like, and I felt it myself, it's like, I'm the only one who feels like this.
Yeah.
And then once you like finally let it out, you're just like, oh shit, everybody is human too.
Everybody feels this way, right? Like, it was funny. I started listening to Darren Hardy recently. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's kind of a Success Magazine. He's a big mentor. He does this Darren Daily thing, and one of the things he said out the other day it was about networking and talking to people, and he said that it doesn't matter who you are, like you can be a famous athlete or actor or whoever. Everybody's just a person. Everybody's just like you and I. Like when it comes down to it, like if you met any one of those people on the street or whatever, 9 times out of 10, they're gonna stop and have a conversation with you the same as anybody else would. Right? Like everybody has gone through something in their life probably very similar to the rest of us. Right?
Yeah.
We're not unique in that way, right? Like
usually have more in common than not.
100%, right? Like, and it's easy to judge people that go through some of this stuff as well too. I know I was always kind of, when you hear people going off work for stress or for this and stuff like that, like, in the past it was always like, man, I don't understand this. Like, this is not a stressful job, or, like they don't have it that hard. What are they worried about? But you never know what's going on in their personal life. It's not always just about work and stuff as well too. So it's, you gotta take a step back and think about what that person may be going through sometimes, right?
Yeah, you never know what someone's going through or what their story is.
Yeah, right. Like they could be, maybe they're working through some of this stuff already, right? Like that could be their recovery. They're already coming back through it. I don't know, right? So it's definitely given, not only to help me, but it's giving me, I guess, a different perspective when I'm talking to people as well too. That, always start the conversation, no matter what setting I'm in, is, just simply asking the person, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? What's going on in your life? Sometimes you're surprised by the answer. Right? It's almost like they're waiting for someone to ask them.
Yeah. And it's almost like sometimes everybody does everything but ask. Yeah.
Right. It's easy to forget that sometimes, right? Like we get so caught up and so busy in our day that we just forget about to just ask, hey, how you doing? Right. So.
Right. No, that's awesome, Marcel. A lot of good information here you passed on. I just want to say thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Great chat. And I love talking about this stuff if it means that it can help somebody else in some way, right? So
100%, man. I really appreciate it. It's the first one on Zoom. Great start to it. I really appreciate it, man. It's good talking to you always.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, buddy. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too, Matt.
Bye.